Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, in the country, and whether you're watching this on replay or time traveling through the ether. It's a wonderful day here in Texas in terms of drizzly and foggy, and it sounds like San Carlos as well, Terry. So it's all going very well for us. It was 82 or is that 26 or something centigrade. I'm not sure what it is, but it's kind of cooled down a bit, and then it's going to go hot again as well. This happens all the time. Hello, Charles. Good to hear from you in Richmond, and Nigel in cold, wet, dark southern England, where I'm from myself, as you can tell from my accent. And flood Townsville. Oh no! I hope you're okay, Malcolm. I heard there was a lot of floods going on. Not so good, not so good at all. JP Mugas, he is there as well in Lewisburg, West Virginia. He's an MVP, good guy, and very good. He's got a project called Taurus TLS, which we're going to talk about soon. But if you're not sure what it is, Taurus, like the bull, and then TLS, and it works with Indy and adds OpenSSL type 3, I think, and 1.3. I'm sure JP will tell us. I know his project does as well, but I'll put a link up from that. Gaza, not the Gaza, from Chile Leeds. Oh, you never know, might be the real Gaza. He's from up that way, isn't he? David in Clarkston, and Stuttgart is Oliver. Who else we got? Doug from Canada, of course. Campbell River. Built in British Columbia, I believe, and not going to be the 51st state. I read somewhere that they're resisting the temptation to join in the fun with the American situation going on at the moment. And it didn't get above 40 Fahrenheit here. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Nigel. You know, move to Texas. We have cookies. Talking of Texas, Tim is in Cedar Park in Texas. Is our winter over? No, come on, Tim. You should know by now. We don't really have a winter. We had winter for about 4 days in January/February, and then we have spring, false spring as we call it, and then we have it goes back to being horrible kind of wintry weather, and then we have another false spring, then we have another one, and then we have the tornado season. So those are our seasons. We don't have seasons like the rest of the world. And after tornado season, then it's boiling hot, and we're all going to die in the heat weather. 105 usually in August. So Barcelona in Spain, a beautiful place, absolutely fantastic architecture, and brilliant for all the artistry out there as well. Really love Barcelona, and enjoyed tapas in Barcelona as well. So hello to all my friends in Barcelona and in Catalonia as well, depending on your politics. Crocs on the main street in Townsville, paddling through and avoiding, hopefully, the crocs in there. Oporto. Hi there in Oporto, Portugal. Was in Portugal last year. Beautiful place, wonderful country, fantastic food. That's the most. I mean, I'm a big guy. Got hair on my shirt there. Go away. And I like food. What could I say? I'm never going to be skinny again. Alex in Champaign-Urbana. Fantastic. Nigel says that's a good idea. Morning all from Washington State. Hello, Ron from Washington State. I hope you're doing well over there and it's not too snowy and all the rest of it. We have a couple of people based in that area as well. I like Washington. I remember going from Seattle, driving to Vancouver and getting stopped at the border, and the guy said, "Why are you going?" I said, "Oh, I want to go and see the aquarium." He said, "What makes you think there's an aquarium in Vancouver?" And it threw me because I'm like, I looked up on the internet. I said to him, I Googled it, and it says there's an aquarium. He's like, okay. I said, there is an aquarium, right? He said, oh, yeah. I don't know if it was like a Canadian sense of humor or something, but border guards were very confusing. We were panicking a little bit. We're like, oh, maybe we're wrong. Maybe the internet is wrong. Ignacy, hi. Thank you, and everybody welcome. Yes, brilliant. Many greetings from 2 developers on the Swabian Jura. Wow. Hello, Marcus. That's fantastic. That's amazing. Swabian Jura. Athens. Hello, Constantine. Yasu, my friend. I'm assuming you mean Athens, not Athens, and not Athens in America, which would be confusing. Patrick is in the Netherlands. I'm going to keep going for a little while. Athens, Greece. Yes, Yasu. So I was right in the first place. Houston. Howdy, my friend, fellow Texan. And Mexico, Coahuila. Very beautiful. Love Mexico. It's a beautiful place. And living in Texas, of course, we are surrounded and immersed in Tex-Mex food and culture. So we feel very, warm. And we have a share a border, even though there's a little bit of nonsense going on about that at the moment. I'm sure that'll sort itself out. Kalamazoo in Michigan. So hello, Marco. And Terry from Toronto again. What else we got? Just kidding. I worked with the team from Townsville. Oh, there you go. And bom dia to Claudine Kogo, who is in Brazil. Beautiful place. I know you. Yes, he's one of our MVPs, I believe. Yeah, I'm sure I'm right. I apologise if I'm promoting you when you're not. What have we got? Site of the only mutiny in US Navy history. I bet it's been close a few times, especially when the food's no good. And Patrick, salut Patrick, my friend and excellent MVP and Spirit of Delphi award winner. Not for much longer, unfortunately, because we only keep the award for a year, but he forever will be the Spirit of Delphi award winner for 2024. Patrick is a really great guy. I know he's off doing some other things now. We've had a discussion about this. He's got some other work in hand that he's going to be working on. He's working on all sorts of things. But he's a big follower of all these things, and it's great to hear from him. And it's very useful in the chat. He often answers questions before I get around to it. Nice in the French Riviera. Oh, I can hear this kind of like... what's the word I'm looking for? Accordions. That's what I always think of the French Riviera, with beautiful countryside there. We need more Delphi Hares bitmaps. Actually, Doug, we've got some coming. I'm going to send out some of the Delphi 30th ones for you to all use. And please do, if you... Doug showing his age as bitmaps, he means wallpapers. Yes, I understand. But they're PNGs nowadays and JPEGs and things like that. We are going to publish some of the bitmaps. For example, we've got this one. Let me just show you one of them. This one, for example, which is obliterating my face, much to everybody's pleasure, I'm sure. I'm probably going to make that available for people so that they can use it in their own bits and bobs. And also this one, which you've probably seen before, that is used for desktop backgrounds. You've seen the cat, I'm sure, which I showed the other week, and we've got all sorts of others as well. So I'm thinking that there is a repo on GitHub called Midjourney Delphi something or other with those on. But I'd like to get some more out because people like to have these backgrounds. And you know what? If you like Delphi and you want to show your love for it, that's a good place. And I've got something to talk about that in a second. Lusaka in Zambia. I'm sure you can't pronounce my name. Let me see if I can do it. Tavadswa. I'm not sure if it's one of these languages that has clicks. I know that there's some languages, but I'm going to say Tavadswa. Tavadswa? Sound. I'm sorry. Maybe you have to send me a recording of it and we can play it. And hi. Thanks, Roberto from Mexico City. Mexico City. Very good. Yeah, hola, my friend. And good afternoon from Portugal. Hello, Luis. Yes, I know who you are, and thank you for joining us. And Doug Filter says you can use SVT. Patrick says to Doug, you can use that. Oh, and the cat. Yes, the cat. Yeah, the cat is... I've got him... It's not on my screen. Hang on. That one. He's not on this screen. I took him off. He was a bit bright and blurry. So, but as says, close enough. Thank you. Look, okay, well, thank you. I do appreciate. I like to show you all saying hi, bonjour to Makhloufi Abdelmahid. Bonne chance, my friend, as well. Thank you. And salute to you as well. Doug says definitely cat. That is actually someone else's, but I asked them and they said we can use it. So I'll get permission to put it up on a public repo. I think they said yes, as long as we attributed it to them. It's from a guy called Paul McGee, not our MVP Paul McGee, but a different guy. Where to buy t-shirts to celebrate Delphi's 30th? You've got me onto a good subject here. So if you are a Delphi fan, two things. First of all, this week I've been asked probably 5 or 6 times by people, where can they get shirts? Not necessarily like these ones, because these are our kind of my brand shirt, employee type shirt. But ones that say Delphi. I've got one that I will put on at some point that has a Delphi helmet on it, and it says begin on here. And yes, on the back it says end semicolon, because I'm the block of code in between the begin and the end. And we've got quite a few designs that people have suggested, and we're actively looking into the idea of whether we can produce a swag shop. One of our MVPs, Darian Miller, is doing one as well, a Pascal related one, and it's quite possible that I'll work with Darian to actually produce a swag shop via him. But I need to go through levels of approval in Idera to do that. So where to buy t-shirts? Stay tuned. I'll probably announce that on Friday next week. Colin Maharaj from Trinidad in the Caribbean. Thank you, Colin. The reason I show this, and I know some people join these webinars and get a bit annoyed that I don't just launch into it like a lecture, like some kind of school lecture. Okay, everybody, stand up and pay attention. This is something I specifically want to do, is to show people that Delphi is in use all over the world. And we've actually got some stuff coming up next Friday, which is Delphi's 30th anniversary next Friday, so a week today. Hello, Heiter. And we've got some cool things happening for the 30th, as you can imagine. I'm hoping for some special guests. It just depends. But, I want people to know the Delphi is in use all over the place. The problem is we're really, really good at being very silently successful. In other words, you write Delphi programs and they keep working and they don't go wrong. It's just one of those things. You can upgrade your Microsoft Windows around it and it'll still keep going because it doesn't have lots of dependencies on .NET or Python runtimes or some other nonsense. And that's kind of a boast, but also it is a fact. It is a fact of how Delphi works. It's one of the things that makes it very popular. You can write a program in Delphi and have it work. That same code, if you use FireMonkey, will work on iOS and Android with virtually no changes, maybe 1 or 2 lines. And it's solid. It works. It doesn't crash. It doesn't go wrong. It just doesn't, as long as you've written it right. And the same is true of Windows and macOS programs and all the rest of it. It is one of our strengths, but because it doesn't go wrong, it also is one of our weaknesses because people don't know it's written in Delphi. We did do a little thing a few years ago where 1905, $1 billion friendly price. We did do a little project where we got people to say, oh, I love Delphi, in terms of putting it on their apps and things like that, but we'd like to do it again. Now, with this in mind, I would like you to do something for me, if you are interested, that is. And I'm going to say just, let me just put this on, okay? I'm just setting something up so that you can know. If you email me here, this is the email address. What I'm doing is I'm asking people, if you love Delphi, if you like Delphi, and you feel like you'd like to let the world know and show that, record a very short 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes at the most video You can do it just an iPhone or Android or on your desktop or whatever. Any way you like. I don't care how you do it. Please don't show any offensive t-shirts and things like that, because I'll have to blur them out and our video edits will go crazy. But all I need you to say is, it truthfully, I like Delphi. Here's what I like about it. This is when I first used it. I'm a new user. I've been using it for 30 years or whatever. Record that and store it on something like Google Drive or OneDrive or some storage facility, and then create a link for that, a share link, and email me there. Okay, ian.barker@embarcadero.com. And we are creating a bunch of montages of people who are giving their story about Delphi. Okay, and you'll start to see them being advertised and promoted. We've got a number of them created already, but I don't want you to lie. If you hate Delphi or you don't want to use it, that's absolutely fine. But if you are a fan of Delphi and you don't mind your people seeing your face, just record a very short video, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. The reason is we want them nice and short, like video shorts, and then store it. Don't attach it to an email. Store it somewhere like Google Drive, and then email it to me here and tell me that you're happy for us to use it. And we will edit that together with a professional video editor, and we're going to create a load of them, okay, out on our social media. So those of you that are regulars, I know you love Delphi, okay? Bonjour de Paris, says Bruno. Bonjour. And we're going to use them to try and raise the consciousness level of people that Delphi is very much alive and used in all sorts of places, in all sorts of countries. So far, as you saw when I was showing these chats messages come up, you'll see it's used in all sorts of countries around the world. I'm no fool. I know that maybe in 2002 or something like that, there were probably 10 times as many Delphi people. And then fashion and marketing activities and mishaps with businesses and things like that meant that, yeah, we're not number one. But we were number 10, 11, 10 in the rankings for languages. That's not bad. We're in the top 10 of computer languages. And it bumps around between 10 and 11, but we've gone up something like, since we were at 17th position or something like that. And the more that people go around and say they use Delphi, then the more that people recognize. Right, and there's a message here. Contreras, hey, Contreras, can you email me about that and I'll talk to you about it? Because as a student, we have academic versions of Delphi as well. This is another thing we don't talk about very often. But if you are a student and a genuine student, we can do academic versions of Delphi. There's also the CE version if you're a genuine student. So a student 1 year that serves and to learn limited, that does not compile executables if you interpret it to test it. No, that's not. We're not going to do an interpreted version. That's just not how it works. Academic version is a full version, and we give you an academic license for your school or whatever, and it's like a one-off, very small price compared to the actual price of the product, and you can have, I don't know how many students. It's a lot. So and the community edition, as Jeff says, is 1 year as well. So we have things to do. If you're not sure, we have stuff we can do for you. So please get in touch, and I'll put you onto the right people. Hello from Iran. Hello, Hussein. Hope you're doing well. And Avidius and James says he's used Delphi since Ball and Pascal on the 8086 IBM PC. Yes. So just to recap, if you like Delphi and you feel up to it, then please do email me. Record a little, hey, I use Delphi, this is why I like it, it's great, or whatever you feel is truthfully coming from you, and upload it to Google Drive or OneDrive or something similar, and then Imgur, or whatever, and then email me a shared link. to it. Don't attach it to an email because it'll just get dropped off the email. But email it to me there, and you know, as long as it's okay, if you don't say anything daft or whatever. And by the way, it can be in any language. We will subtitle it in English, so that a wider audience can see it. But if English is not your first language, and you don't feel comfortable speaking English, then feel free to use your own language. Patrick Prematin speaks a very good English, but Patrick is always worried about speaking English because he said, "Oh, my English is not so good." But that's fine. Speaking French, if French is your first language, speaking Brazilian Portuguese or Arabic or whatever. We will get it translated. We will put subtitles at the bottom of the video, and it's a cool video. They do. I'll show some next week. But they do, you know, all these kind of crazy professional editing stuff. So, yeah. Does DB Artisan exist? I'm not sure actually. I don't really do that. So, wow, James, it's a long time. Yes. Prepare for next week when we hear more about it. Okay, look. We could go on forever talking about this, but we need to talk about today's subject. So let's just recap what we're doing with webinars. So today is about installers and installer technology and some of the challenges and things that you can do. We're going to look at some built-in software that can create installers, but also some commercial versions as well from some of our tech partners, and also just generally what's available on the internet, and then some free versions as well. So stuff you can literally use without paying and create installers. Then on Tuesday, rather ridiculously, I've said that I'll do a webinar all about scaling for high DPIs, so high resolution graphics, which is it's a challenge. So it's going to be interesting to do a webinar about that. And then next Friday is the very special webinar. Charlie says, have I missed the how to about installers? No, you haven't. You should know by now the webinars. Don't just jump into it straight away. No, we're good. We haven't started yet. So it's good. So just you know, next Friday is the big one. So talk about it amongst friends and anybody that likes Delphi wants to know just some history. We're going to try and include some very cool guests. I can't promise who they are because some of them will wait and say yes, some of them are busy, some are traveling, and some have got suffered from wildfires and things like that. So, you know, it's tricky, but we're going to try and make it a special one next Friday. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me just get things going. So I need to, and I've learned now that I can zoom things around a little. And share my screen with it working. So let's share my entire screen here. I started with Turbo Pascal. Delphi does it if you deploy your. Yeah, okay, all right. Well, we're going to talk all about it. So let me share my screen and let's get into the webinar. I'm going to hide my camera and find my drivey bit, which is this bit here. We're good, I think. Haito says, I hope you can add something about installers for Windows Store. Good news. I do indeed include that and several options. So you're good. Right. So let's get down to the business of what we're talking about today. So today, part of the 30 for 30 webinars. I'm doing 30 webinars for 30 years of Delphi. Oh boy, it's a lot of webinars. And for those of you that have probably joined for the first time and don't know who I am, which is possible, I guess, Ian Barker is my name, and I am the Embarcadero developer advocate. You can email me, and please do, at ian.barker@embarcadero.com. You can read about me as well, about.me/Ian Barker, and learn some things I do. I do quite a lot, do weird stuff, as well as regular, you know, developer-y, programmer-y kind of things as well. And, you know, if there's something you want to talk about Delphi or development in general, then please, you know, feel free to email me. I will answer your emails. I'm not there to give technical support. I don't have enough time to do that. And also, we have a whole dedicated support department whose job it is to actually answer those questions. And they're way better than me at it. They're much, much better. Anything else? You've got something you want to talk about, good or bad? I don't mind. I hear the good news and the bad news. Otherwise, how can we change? If I only get people telling me how cool everything is, then nothing's going to improve, is it? Today's slides will be available, not right now, but they will be at tinyurl.com/installers30. If you go to that link, you'll see the replay of video and you'll also see slides as well. So what are we talking about today? Well, today we are talking about how to create installers for your apps on Windows, macOS, and Linux. Now, the graphic there is showing iOS and Linux and Windows. I don't know why I didn't put the Android logo in there, but the reason I'm really not talking about iOS and Android today is because actually it's kind of taken care of when you submit your packages to the App Store. But I will cover that as we go along and talk about it. But they don't really need installers because the providers like Google Play Store and the Apple App Store kind of deal with that for us. So, those of you that remember Delphi 1, and some of you I'm sure are not old enough because it's been 30 years. So if you're under 30 or maybe perhaps even under 40, I guess now, you would have been very, very young or not even around when Delphi 1 was around. And it had the best install screen. This is actually a screenshot of the actual screenshot, installer of the product. And yes, it was a kind of very bitty, fuzzy graphic of a race car. And this was quite innovative. I mean, people had weird sort of install programs back in the day, but even for that era, this was a wild one. And yes, you can see in there, it's a diskette 15 because Delphi did arrive on a number of diskettes. I think when I got it, there were probably 3.5-inch diskettes or something like that. But they came out of 5-inch diskettes and 3-inch diskettes as well. So yeah, those were the days, swapping a bunch of diskettes. But at least you had the program there physically in your hands. And Patrick says, yeah, I remember that install screen, and so does Stephen K. I know, right? Isn't it weird? It was awesome. And the Paradox installer too. Yes, that also did it because Borland did Poland Paradox and Sidekick, and also Turbo Pascal and Delphi. Now, over the years, the installer had to do more, and it wasn't really as much fun. No cars anymore. It's all kind of utilitarian. But it does have to deal with a lot more, like, for example, installing C++, because later on we included the C++ builder in the product and called it Rad Studio, combined the two, so you can do Delphi and C++. I don't talk about C++ a lot, but we do some separate video webinars about C++. But nowadays, of course, this installer is allowing you to do things like install for Windows, iOS, Android, macOS, and Linux. And of course, if you say, well, I'm never going to do Android, and I'm never going to do iOS, then you can turn those off. And this kind of visual metaphor, to use a bit of jargon there, or this paradigm, is quite common for other people's installer apps. They tend to have, optional things that turn on and off. And from this install screen, which is actually the Rad Studio 12.2 install screen, you can choose all sorts of different options, like whether you want the samples and help. And as you can see in my version, I'll just put everything in. Why not? Let's go for it. And then run out of disk space, of course. It's a multi-platform world now, certainly for Delphi, not so much for C++ Builder at the moment, although, we're hoping to do something about that in the future. A lot of people would like to see that, but it depends on what we can do, and we can't, Idea don't want us to give out roadmaps or anything. So all I can say is, yeah, we know it's important, but certainly for Delphi, you can target Windows 32-bit, 64-bit, and all of the other platforms at the same time. And also, it it gets complicated because not is it only about different platforms, but even if you took, for example, excuse me, Windows, Windows in itself is really multi-platform because the way that you install for Windows 32-bit is not quite the same as the way you would install for Windows 64-bit. Windows ARM, yeah, it's mostly the same. Windows Server, there are some definite nuances to do with what you do with Windows Server apps and where you can and can't install. Windows SE, which is a special edition for schools, that used to be how they marketed it. It's cloud-based. That's how they sell it, but it's not really. It's more like a restricted, cut-down version, locked-in version, so we say, of Windows. But also, nowadays people are installing in virtual machines, so you've got to make sure that your stuff works inside a virtual machine. And you can even deliver it in containers like Docker and other technologies that do containers. So even if you say, well, I'm only going to do Windows, then you could be looking at all sorts of different targets. And someone very important in the company is messaging me. I'm just going to tell them, sorry, I'm busy. It's a boss, so I need to actually say sorry. I'm actually doing stuff. Otherwise, I'll just get cross. So yeah, when you're targeting, you are even if it's just a single platform, life got more complicated. It used to be in the good old days when you were targeting Windows, and it wouldn't be difficult. You would just, you wrote a Windows installer, and you could even copy files into various places, and off you went, and it worked. Not so true anymore. In theory, you can go back to those days of the 90s, and you could still do a thing called an Xcopy install. Now, the reason it's got that nickname, and it's quite often not Xcopy, it's all sorts of other copy tools that can do it, like copy and Xcopy and various other types of utility. But it's called that because the most common tool that people use to do a thing called an Xcopy install is called Xcopy. And what you're doing there is you're literally doing it the hard way, or doing it the risky way, depending on which way your perspective is. So you copy it from a location where your executable is, and you copy it to wherever you want to have it installed. Great idea. Only problem that is it's vulnerable to mistakes. You've got no retry or security or anything like that. If you've got to install things like shared DLLs or parts of the infrastructure and operating system, then you could be in quite serious trouble. You could overwrite something critical and cause a problem with Windows. Now, Windows does protect some of those operating system files, but let's say it isn't an operating system file. Let's say it's part of a database system that isn't the Windows or whatever system you're going to, doesn't care about that. But your shared database system, like MySQL is, if you just copy over that, boom, you've just killed it. You murdered it. And so when I see people say, "Oh, I'm going to use Xcopy," generally it's either very, very simple stuff that they're copying into one place. And I do have an app that you could do this with. I have a client server app. You can put it on a thumb drive, a USB memory stick, and run it from the memory stick. But likewise, you could just copy it to any folder on the computer and run it, because everything it does is connecting to a server remotely. It doesn't store anything locally. It's deliberate. But you could literally copy it over. You could have a batch file or something like that. Windows doesn't like that behavior. It sees it as being virus-like, because as you can imagine, viruses work this way. And so it's generally frowned upon. Now, if you wanted to do this for Windows, and again, I suggest you don't, you can go to Project Options, and you can go down to Provisioning, select the release configuration, and pick whatever target you're going to choose. So Windows 32 or Windows 64. Compile your application, and then if you right-click on your project name and select Show in Explorer, those two folders that I've got the little box around there, that's where your .exe is. Now, weirdly enough, on the things like Visual Studio, that doesn't always work like that. And I don't think we necessarily have a particularly good way of directly getting to the executables either. But you can change the provisioning to copy that file to somewhere else if that's what you wanted to do. So let's say you're working in a company where you have got free access to storing something on the network, and that program is the thing that people are accessing. Then you could set up your deployment options. As I said, go into project options, then go down to deployment and provisioning, and you could get it to output the file to somewhere else, like a network drive, and everybody can access it that way. That would be really the equivalent of an Xcopy install. But if you wanted to know where your myprogram.exe is, then it's going to either be in the Win32 folder or the Win64 folder. The same is true for an Android app. As you can see on the right-hand image there, if you look at the very top underneath the word recovery, there's my Android 64, and in there will be my files for Android. And the same is true of the iOS 64. There would be the .rpa file for the and the iOS project, which I would then upload to the Apple Store or distribute in some other way. And finally, with Linux, I would have a Linux 64 or whatever folder, and then have a file in there and copy it. But this is not really the right way to do it on a scale. It's okay if you're doing it for your friends, or if you're doing it for colleagues that they trust you, you trust them. But really, it's not practical if you're going to start looking at selling a product or putting it up into the app stores. Now, those folders that I've put the rectangle around there, those are the folders where you would find the what are called the resources or the artifacts that you would upload to various things, but that's just not how you do it. You can do an Xcopy install for things like Linux. You can see a similar command line there. I'm actually using tar, which is an archiving tool, but there's gzip and all sorts of different things for Mac and Linux. But Mac will get very upset if you start copying executable files around. It will also want you to set the permissions on the executable to make it safe, shall we say. And in fact, Mac uses things called notarization now, and the same is similar to Windows, where it's code signing, and Linux to a certain degree as well now, to stop you doing this. Being able to copy files around, as long as it's notarized, yes, in theory you can do that, but this is just not the way things should be done. This is not the right way of doing it. In general, copying files manually is a bad idea. You can accidentally overwrite something critical. You could overwrite an application that's in use. You could not spot an error message that says it's failed to copy because it's in use, or someone's got it open in Explorer or something nonsensical like that. You could install a version that's earlier than the version of someone else is using. So you actually install an older version than the one that's actually in use on the machine. So copying files is a bad idea. You can use version flags, but it's just not the right way to do it. Built-in options. Well, for Windows, you can use the built-in MSIX support. And the reason you would do that is for something like the App Store, which actually wants you to have MSIX components. But you can also say, I want to distribute it as an ad hoc thing. And MSIX is its kind of own installer technology. It's Microsoft's, preferred way of doing things. I personally don't use MSIX for my apps, and I'll talk about what I do use in a moment, because we'll get to those slides. There's quite a few slides, and I talk about lots of different options. But I personally don't use MSIX. But if you're going to put something in the App Store, you've got no option. But some departments, some IT departments in corporates, and some corporate customers will actually insist on you delivering an MSIX. The reason is that they can do all sorts of exciting things with streaming it into a ready-made machine image and stuff like that. Plus, they like the security of it. They've got tools that manipulate the MSIX and make it work in certain ways. You can deploy, as I said, to the Windows Store this way too. That was one of the questions that someone asked. And the way you do that, again, is you go to Product Options. You say Deployment and Provisioning. and then you say that you want to do a build type, which is for the 64-bit application store, because nowadays nearly everything is 64-bit. And as you'll see soon, distribution type, or ad hoc, just means you just give it out to people, willy-nilly. But if you choose the actual Windows Store itself, and I'll show you a help page for that in a moment, then there'll be some other settings to put in. So you can load your applications into the Windows Store, and it can appear in the Windows Store. If you see the image in the background there, that is the Windows Store on my machine. I like dark mode, so as you can see, it's on there, but there's my little face and top toolbar there at the top. And Windows Store apps are checked for obvious viruses. I mean, it doesn't guarantee it, but they do check it and scan it in various ways, and they can deploy it and make your life a lot easier. They handle all of that hosting and deployment for you, and you don't need to worry about that. You do need to get a developer account, but once you've paid them, then it's all included, and they obviously want to encourage you to use that. Windows Store it used to be not very well used. People preferred not to use it. I don't know why. I think they're just concerned about it. Nowadays, it is actually more common. And in fact, some people have customized Windows stores and things like that as well. So it is worth having. Peter says you can't code sign in Windows with a PFX file anymore, as it only comes on a secure token. Actually, yeah, what happens is you can load it from a path. So I've got a secure token, and it does ask me for that. I don't do it that way. I actually sign, as I said before, I sign my apps outside and do it that way. But the certificate file is for the App Store. It's not the same thing. But the secure token that I've got, I forget who it's from now, but I've got it set up. So I ask the password once, and then off you go. But we're looking at that. That's something we're looking to do. Anyway, if you read the options here and read more about an MSX, like I said, I don't use it. It's not the way I do things. It's just an option. It's a moving target at the moment because of the change to tokens last year. It used to be that for your code signing certificates, you could have certificates that were stored in different locations and read them in, but they made it so, and then you didn't need a token, but now it's compulsory. You have to have a token, and nearly all of those tokens you have to put a password in at least once. So the whole process of automating this is not as easy as it used to be. There is an option that overcomes that. It's called Signator, and it's from one of our tech partners, the company that make Final Builder, and I'll talk about that at the end as well. But Signator allows you to sign from a server without having to keep, getting your token plugged in and all the rest of it. It's very clever how it's done. So dedicated install as well. This is the way that I prefer to do it, and that's how I distribute my own apps. And there's a couple of different ways, and some of them are paid. In other words, you have to pay money out for them, and some of them are free. And if you're looking for someone who is someone that we recognize, then if you go to our partners programs, there's a bunch of people there, and I'm going to put a tag on the images when I talk about them to say which people that I'm showing at the moment are tech partners. Tech partners have a relationship with us. It means that they work with us to make sure that their product is compatible with the latest versions of RAD Studio, and generally that version of RAD Studio might be one that's unreleased as well. So we invite them to take part in beta programs. Sometimes there are non-public beta programs, so we only want our tech partners to be involved in those, depending on what we're changing in the ID, and some of them the public betas, but we give them early access as well. As a tech partner, we try to make sure that particularly if they're supplying a service like an installer, that their installer, if it integrates into the IDE, we want to make sure it's going to work. So we liaise with the tech partners, and in fact I manage that program. If you are someone that does these things, then contact us. And assuming everything's fine, we can sign you up as a tech partner and go from there. So some of the commercial options now. The weird thing about installers is the price range that comes out for them when you pay for a version. And it's weird. It's one of those things where some of them, if you choose certain options, they are massively expensive. And I mean, like $7,000, $8,000, and one I saw was 12,000 US dollars for the application, which is good for them. But my word, that's eye-wateringly expensive. What they did for that amount of money is quite impressive. But even so, wow, it's amazing. But one of the apps that is a tech partner, as you can see with the logo down the bottom right hand side, is Installerware. And they got a nice, easy to remember domain, installerware.com. They support Windows, macOS. They do code signing, including the tokens, and including Azure trusted signing, which is a cloud-based type of signing for applications. Their price for their app is on their website, but I looked it up and they have one called Installerware Express, and that starts at 718 US dollars. But it goes upwards depending on the capabilities you want. So if you want the top of the range Installerware Studio Admin, which I think is like a multi-developer, multi-seat site license, then that's when you start talking about incredibly expensive amounts of money. But to be honest, if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your software, and I hope you are, as a commercial organization, then of course this is the kind of thing you want. It does work for almost every install scenario you can have. They have a lot of different design features. So macOS builds and Windows and this and that and all the rest of it. If you go to their site, they do things like they understand torrents and we can manage torrents. So if you understand what BitTorrent is, some of them will actually allow you to install from BitTorrent resources. That means you're downloading from multiple machines at the same time, little bits and bobs, which is hence the name BitTorrent, which is quite an interesting idea. It means that you're not then reliant on one particular content delivery network or content delivery server. And they also have a trial version is available as well. So if you go in to get it, and in the search box at the top, make sure you've got the options down the side. So all, name, and all in the categories down on the left of that dialog box there. But go to the search box and type in install space AW, and you can see a free trial of Installerware. And it will tell you what they can do. They target basically anything you'd ever want. So it will do ARM and regular Intel chips, and it'll do next generation IX and all sorts of exciting things. But that's Installerware, and good bunch of people. I know them from having chatted to them and things like that. Another tech partner as well, which is also a commercial / paid version, is Nigel Armstrong says, does it install web broker on remote hosted sites? Nigel, I don't know. Go to their site, installerware.com, and ask them and see what they say. It may well do. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Just look, and also their support is very responsive. So you could email the support and ask them. They are Delphi people. They do understand how it works, so they'll come back and tell you a straight answer, yes or no. This is another commercial option. This is from a company based in Slovakia, in case you don't recognize the domain there, .sk. And they are kind of a front end for NSIS, the Nullsoft installer, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and InnoSetup, which is another one I'm going to talk about in a moment. Both of those are free options for installers, and as a consequence, their price is very low. It actually only costs 49 euros for the whole thing, which is pretty remarkable. It is only for Windows. As far as I'm aware, let me just check that. Yeah, it is only for Windows, and it does all the things you could want. It integrates into RAD Studio, and you can create all sorts of project types and things like that. But read about it on the help file. And once again, because they're tech partners and because they've submitted to get it, there is a install a Radin installer trial available. If you want to find it, go into get it again. Make sure everything down on the left hand side is ticked, so it says all, and then just type in rad space and then the ampersand character. Don't put and in because that won't work. You'll just get a whole bunch of things. But just type in rad space and, or just installer. The same thing will work. And again, it's a free trial. But at 49 euros, you can't really argue with that. That's extremely competitive price. Like I say, they are a front end for an SIS, and go from there. Contreras says it can be installed on Harmony OS and Open Harmony. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. And another option, commercial option. Now, this is not a tech partner. This is actually a company that we don't have a direct relationship with. And I'll explain why in a moment, because I think they're changing their direction for what they want to do in life. And that is, it used to be in something that I think you used to get a cut down version with Rad Studio at some point. Some of your old timers who have used Rad Studio for a while, if you can think back, did Install Shield get installed with Rad Studio? I feel like there was some kind of Embarcadero version or Ballin version, but anyway, Install Shield used to be the big de facto standard, I think, back in the day. It is less prominent than it used to be, and I have an idea of why that might be. And the reason is that the price for Install Shield, which actually, is pretty restrictive price in the sense that it only does MSI, XCs, Install Shield Express. There you go, Gaza. Thanks very much. I thought there was an install version, but anyway, the price for Install Shield Pro is $4,723, and that's just for the version that does Windows only. So wow, that's interesting. But that is a 3-year subscription. So with that, you get all the updates for 3 years. When things go wrong or Windows suddenly changes, then that subscription covers you for that, and presumably also covers you for any little mishaps in technical support or rest of it. But read the details on their website. Their website is not obvious. It's revenera.com, revenera.com. It's down there at the bottom in the red. The next version up is Install Anywhere. That's why I've shown both of those there. Now, Install Anywhere uses Java as its technology, and it will literally install anywhere. You name it. If there's a machine out there, then you can use Install Anywhere to install in it. They have an exhaustive list on the website that tells you all about what it does. But it's if you want the definitive can do it anywhere, create an installer that does anything, then Install Anywhere is the toy to do it with. Again, it's a 3-year subscription, and it is $7,795, so nearly $7,800. But that is for 3 years, so I guess it's amortized over that time. Charlie Heaps says yes, it used to be Install Shield Express, and now it's horrendously expensive and requires a subscription. Yeah, I think it's weird. I'll tell you why I think this has happened. When I went to Revenera's website, if you go there, you will find that they talk a lot about supply chain security and package security and stuff like that. My feeling is, and I read the company history a bit, that they got bought out, and the company that they got bought out specializes in security and supply chain security. And so it could be that this is not really their main line of business anymore, and that they really do, focus on the security industry, which tends to charge a lot more for its services. There's presumably more money in there. So yeah, I guess things have moved on. That's fine for them. That's their business model. I've got no qualms about that, but it's expensive for it's probably out of reach for most single developers, I'd say, particularly when there's other options. Charlie says Install Shield Express has got really restrictive copy protection, hard to move among different PCs and VMs. Yeah, I can't speak to that. I haven't used them for years. Once they started doing some weird things, I decided to move away and do something else. But in the sake of completeness, I thought it was important to mention them. Luis Santos, guess what? Luis says, we have Delphi. What more tools do we need to make a good installer? I will show you. And Bsoft, email me about being an MVP at my email address, and we'll talk about it. What can be done? Right. So let's go to commercial options, number 3. Now, the other one that kind of rules the roost, and I actually personally have used over a number of years, is Install Builder. Now, I like Install Builder. Some people don't. I don't know why. I find it intuitive, and I find it to be extremely reliable. I use it for some commercial software that I have, worked for in the past and things like that, and I've never found it to be a problem. It's always worked and worked the way it should be. It provides a native look and feel and desktop integration for Windows, OS X on Macintosh, KDE and GNOME on Linux. And also, the one thing I like, which I really like actually, is that you can debug your install. So you can kind of go into a single step or breakpoint mode. And if you look on the screenshot there, you'll see like a button that says step or something. You can literally debug your installer. And so it goes, I'll install this bit. Now I'll do this bit. Now I'll do this bit. And it's very useful for when something's happening and the installer's going and dying and you can't work out why. Very useful. It will allow you to create installers for Windows, Mac, Linux. It doesn't do iOS and Android because it doesn't really need to, because that's kind of handled by their application stores themselves. But Install Builder, I'm a personal fan of it. It does do some cool things as well, which I actually don't do, but you can create DMGs. If you're a Mac user or you're trying to target Macs, then there you go. Patrick's put it up. My email address. For the Install Builder, it creates DMGs for the Macs. If you are targeting Macs, or you think, well, maybe I would like to, I don't know, produce some fonts for the Mac or something like that. I don't know, some package that isn't necessarily executable, but something else. Then you can make DMG installers. That's kind of the way that a lot of people deliver their applications on Mac. It's very, very easy. Usually with DMG, there's 2 ways of doing it. One way is you just double click on it and installs. Another way is, I think some of them, it says drag and drop, and they have 2 icons. You drag it from one place to another, and then it installs it in the applications folder. It's very interesting. I don't, as I said before, I don't use that. I use some other tools to do that. But Install Builder, I've got a lot of love for it. I've used it personally. That's not an endorsement. I can just tell you that I've used it and it worked for me. You may use it and it may not work, or it may not do what you want. Test it out and have a go. I'm sure they've got a trial version. They're not tech partners, so we don't have a link with them. And I don't believe it's in Get It, but I have used it and I can say it works. Free and open source options. This is the fun bit. So I am surprised that people can go and ask, $7,000 for something that only installs. Actually, it was $4,000. I apologize, but I'm surprised that someone can ask $4,000 for an installer that only does Windows, when there is something around like the Nullsoft scriptable install system, also known as NSIS, because this is completely free. and it's not only free, but it's open source as well, and it's ubiquitous. In other words, it's around a lot. A lot of people use it. And you might be thinking, where have I heard of Nullsoft before? That name sounds familiar. It depends how long you've been around, on the internet or the rest of it. But if you're around in the 90s when the internet first came out, in the early 2000s, you'll have seen Nullsoft because of this Winamp. Winamp used to be the thing for playing MP3s and stuff like that. And they used to have a thing that had a really impressive whip cracking sound and saying, whipping the llama's buttocks, shall we say. I can't say the other word because otherwise YouTube will get cross with me. But whipping the llama's buttocks. And it was very distinctive. And Winamp was the thing. And this is where that came from. Nullsoft wrote an installer to install their Winamp product. And so lots and lots of people have seen this over the years, but it's still going strong. And it's now open source, very, very widely used. People are thinking, Winamp, oh my God. Exactly, Winamp was the thing, wasn't it? I mean, everybody loved Winamp. Sorry, got to have a drink so my voice doesn't go. Do you know Winamp recently, it was open sourced and then immediately withdrawn again because apparently the person that open sourced it, there was some suggestion that they didn't have the rights to open source it, which is a shame. But I don't know. It's Winamp was very cool back in its day, and it's aged badly, but it was the first real skinnable app that you used to have. But that's where the Nullsoft installer came from. Now. You might think, well, if it comes from that early in the internet, then it's old-fashioned. And yeah, to some extent, there are, ways of making an old-fashioned looking installer. But actually, because of the way it works, you can do some very kind of heavy-duty things. Now, the top left-hand image there I took from Wikipedia. So it's a Creative Commons image, but someone in the comment there, because I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like the graduated fill as you scroll down. They said they actually did that by hand. I don't know why they did that, but I just wanted to show that you can have different themes and different buttons and things like that, because of course you would, given that Winamp was skinnable. People are saying, oh, you can develop something, a custom installer from Embarcadero, Pascal, or C++ for application distribution. Hold your horses there, because I'm going to show you something that is a free version of installer, very powerful, written entirely in Delphi. So yeah, Nullsoft, very popular, used very, very widely, is for Windows only currently, but you can do like those little bars there with the detected RAM and CPU and all the rest of it. And if you want to do a tree type version, a bit like MySQL's installer, you can do it that way. And also you can create other things like the eMule one is kind of cool with the little hero image on the left there, or you can use the modern UI and have it looking very boring like you work at Microsoft and your soul was sucked out by demons or something. It's very cool. It is completely open source and free, and you can get it at nsis.sourceforge.io. If you remember early on, we talked about the people in Slovakia whose company name was, sorry about that, Unsigned. If you go to unsigned.sk, they are the people that actually create a front end for Nullsoft, for the Nullsoft installer. And so you can take a lot of the scripting part out of it and use their tool. €49 is a pretty good price, I think. So what other free options? Well, all of you that have been saying, wait, we could write something with Delphi to do that. Here you are, a program that is entirely written in Delphi and supports scripting in Pascal as well, and it is in a setup. jrsoftware.org/isinfo.php. Sorry about the weird URL, that's just the way they have it set up. But Jordan is the guy that wrote this, Jordan Russell. and Martin Laan. I think they're based in Holland, in the Netherlands, actually. But it is completely open source and it's written in Delphi. You can literally go to the open source area and download that source code and have a look at how they do it, if you feel that minded. And Giuseppe says Inno setup is the best one. I actually agree, and the reason I agree is I use it myself. I actually use Inno setup for building installs. I swapped from Install Builder, which I have to use for a different project still, but for all of my Windows-based software, I use Inno setup. Me personally, when I'm writing code. Because it works and it's free and it's great and it does everything you want. It takes a little bit getting used to because the scripting is very, very powerful. You can create custom dialogues and things like that. Haito says, what I haven't been able to do within our setup is to manage updates on the Windows Store. The store won't show an update button when updating a new installer. Okay, I don't know about that one. Email me if you like and we'll have a look into it. I'll see if anybody else knows. Peter Turtle, hello Pete, how's it going? A friend of mine. Inno is awesome, and I particularly like the third-party Inno Script Studio. Guess what? I'm about to talk about exactly that. You and I are on the same level as always. And Ignacy Riera also says, yes, I use Inno Setup with Inno Script Studio as well. Does Inno Setup support self-updating programs? Actually, I don't know. It does support all sorts of things like patches and stuff like that. So there you go. One thing about Inno Setup is because it's written in Delphi, it supports all the Delphi skins and themes. So if you've got a favorite skin that you like and your application comes delivered in that skin, you can skin Inno Setup, so your setup installer, so that it matches your application. So they literally look like they belong together. This is unusual. You can't often do this with installers, but because it's a Delphi application, then you can go to Ricardo Ruiz's VCL Styles plugins and you can and download it and get it working. So of course it supports Delphi skins, and I've got two duplicate slides there. I made a mistake. But as several people mentioned, the one thing that people like to use is the Inno Setup compiler is like the bit that does the coding, shall we say. But a lot of people like the Inno Script Studio. Now, if you go there to jrsoftware.org/isinfo.php, there's a link that says third party, and he says in there that Inno Script Studio is no longer updated. I agree, it isn't updated anymore. However, I can tell you that it works absolutely 100% fine and exercises all of the features of Inno Setup. This is completely free as well. You download it, and what it does is it makes your life a little bit easier by allowing you to actually go in there and use a GUI to edit bits of the script. So it does the script manipulation for you. You can, if you want to, if you feel particularly inclined, you can go in and open that script in a text editor and do it in a text editor. You could open it in Rad Studio if you felt like it, or open it more, in Ultra Edit or something along that, and edit those script by hand. But it's a lot easier if you use the Script Studio. The Script Studio and Setup supports things like include files. Now, this particular setup that we've got here is actually from a real product, which is why I've wiped out the GUIDs. I guess that would be a problem otherwise. But this particular product creates 80 different variations. This is what the customer wanted. And what it does that via the use of an include file. So you can say, include this if it's this version, include that if it's a different version, because they have different levels. They have like a 10 plus 100 200 version, and those products have different capabilities, and they didn't want it so that people could hack that program and enable a capability they hadn't paid for. And so that's how it's done. And yes, it pulls in the version number, which is created during the build process. So when I say build all, and it builds all the executables, it creates a version number at that point and stores it in there. And so when the installer installs, it reads that text file, and so everything that installs, it stamps them with the version number. The executables are stamped anyway, but there are other resources that don't support version info, and so we use the text file and do it that way. Colin Maharaj says, I use Inno setup with a batch file to copy my exes, extract version info, update the Inno setup ini file, and with that version info, then make the installer. So it's an automated build. Yeah, actually, I do the same thing. It just happens to be that I use a build event in Rad Studio to do that. I wrote a little executable to get some specific information out of that version resource and then put it in the text file and then get pulled in. I know it says version number, but it's actually a little bit more than that, some other information, because there's a US version of this program and a UK version, and then there's white label versions and things like that. So very, very interesting product and completely free. So free is the best price, right? But sometimes free means cheap, and cheap sometimes means breakable. Not true of setup. It is free, as in completely free. The source code is copyrighted, by the way. You can't just go and create your own version of setup and call it my setup and then sell it, because they withhold the copyright. But other than that, you can do what you like with it. You can rebuild the setup and create your own version if you really feel inclined. I'm not so sure you would do that, but anyway. But if you're going to use it, I would suggest you click on the third-party link and go down to the thing that says setup script studio and use that, because even though it says it's no longer updated, it works absolutely fine. So it's worth doing. And that's it. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. One thing I would say, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back to me. So turn on my camera and stop sharing. One thing about installers, and thank you, by the way, for everybody that commented. Probably the most comments we've had for a long time that are useful as well. Does Inno setup support MSIX? I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. Go to their website and have a look. I happen to create setups that are EXEs because that's how this customer wants to distribute things. But what I was going to say was, the thing is, I use Microsoft Edge, okay, as my browser, and it has a thing called collections. So when I'm preparing for a webinar, when I'm researching the topic, I create a collection that is for all of those related pages, so that I know where they are. They're all there, and then when I go to write the blog post that goes with it, and I'm behind a couple at the moment, I've got all those web pages ready, and I can refer you to the links and all the rest of it. And that collection for the installers has got like 35 to 40 pages or more to do with installers. There is a lot of installer technology out there, particularly for MSIX, because it's the Microsoft standard. It's not our standard, and it's not closed standard. There are lots of tools. If you just Google MSIX Builder or something along those lines, you will find a lot of options. I could have kept going for another 40 minutes talking about the options, and that's not really practical, is it? But actually, there were options for DMG. So for Macintosh, there are lots of freeware versions that do Macs installers, but only Mac installers. And there are lots of freeware versions that do only MSIX. And then there's some that do everything. So it's a lot going on, I think, in terms of installer technology. what's interesting is when I see that, when I see lots of options for something, it means one of two things. Either there's a lot of money to be made, and people go, all right, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon, and there's an expensive option, so I'll do my cheaper option and try and make some money. Or the options that are available don't suit every single person. So someone goes, I don't like the way that works. I want to do my own version that does something else, or it's too difficult, or it doesn't include a capability that they really need or feel is essential. And so they create their own version to make an industry out of it. Given that there are so many installer technologies out there, and I only showed the ones that I think personally I've either used or I think are capable. Given there's so many options out there, I suspect it's one of those things where there is no one size to fit all. So, go ahead and take a look yourself and Google it and see what you think. But the options I have are ones that I've personally had experience of, and I know that they're sound. If I was to pick a free version, I would probably pick Setup. It's very well loved, and it's written in Delphi. So, of course, I think it's a good idea because it's the same language I use. So if they ever got wiped off the map or stopped maintaining it, I can open it up and tinker with the code myself and fix it. If I was going to choose a front end, I would probably choose the unsigned.sk, their front end, because at €49 it's an absolute bargain for what it does. But I think there are lots of other options as well. Like I say, I've used Install Builder for years and years and years because there's a particular product that I had a bunch of installs built for that product using Install Builder, and it's great. I like it, but it's just it's no longer feasible for me to use it on some other projects and go from there. Contreras says, how do we become an Embarcadero partner? Well, that's an easy answer. What you need to do is email me and tell me who you are and why you think it would be a good fit for everybody to become an Embarcadero partner. Sometimes, and this happened, and I know one of those people's in the chat at the moment, sometimes it doesn't work out. And I most of the time I'm handing people off to go and talk to other people about making arrangements, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes that's a problem for them, and they're upset with me. And I get that. I'm here to have people be annoyed at me if they want to be. We can't always say yes to everybody, and sometimes the way things work out, it's not a good fit at that point. A no now doesn't mean to say it's a no in the future, and a no in the past doesn't mean to say it's a no now either. So, email me. I administer that program, the Tech Partners program, and the MVP program. If you are looking to be an MVP, and you're in a country like, say, for example, Germany, or the Netherlands or Brazil, there's a high bar. And the reason is that we have a lot of very, very good MVPs at the moment in those countries. And there's only so many that I can make an MVP. It would be ridiculous. I can't really make everybody an MVP. I mean, I'd like to, but it's not really practical. If you're in a country that is underrepresented, for example, Switzerland, we have a very good MVP there. It's actually a bad choice because we don't want more MVPs in Switzerland, but we do have one, and I think maybe two that are on the border. France, we have a couple, don't we, Patrick? And there's at least three in France because it's quite a big country. But if you're in a market like, for example, Zoe, I think it's Zoe. I apologize if it's not called Zoe, but she's in a country where I think it was Ghana, where we're underrepresented. Then let me know because I'm interested in talking to people like that. If you work in the education market, I don't make the decision on education partners. But I will put you in touch with the right people. And if you are an educator and trying to teach people, particularly if you can get Delphi taught in schools and colleges, then we'll try and do what we can. Sometimes it didn't work out. There was one while ago which I felt really bad about because I thought it would work out and it didn't. But you know, it's not guaranteed. Like I say, I can't guarantee these things work out. Idea are our parent company. They have their own decision-making process on some things. The top brass, the top bosses at Embarcadero, they listen to me. You know, I have got a voice in the company. I am fairly senior in the company, but at the end of the day, if enough senior people say no, even if I put my point across, at the end of the day, there's some people who can say no, it's a no, and then I can't do anything about it. But if you want to, email me, and we'll see what we can do. And like I say, if we said no in the past, it doesn't mean to say it's a no in the future. And if we say no now, it doesn't mean to say it's a no in the future as well. I want as many Delphi people as possible represented out there. And as I said before, if you like Delphi and you remember when you know, what you like about Delphi, you know, when I first saw Delphi, there's this, or when I started using Delphi because of this, record it on and a camera. It can be a cell phone or anything like that. Record a quick 30 seconds to 3 minutes maximum video just telling us, and store it on Google Drive or OneDrive or somewhere like that, Imagure, and then email me a share link to my email address, and we'll probably have you on camera, for that video, not live, but we'll put your face across the internet saying why you like Delphi and how you use it. Ignacio says, I only program industrial applications until now. Well, it's all interesting stuff. And the reason I was talking about the partnership is because people were saying, oh, how do I become a partner? And some tools to protect an exe generated by Embarcadero from decompilers. Actually, code signing helps a lot with that, but it doesn't prevent it. There are tools to obfuscate code, Delphi and Pascal code, but the reality is that it's extremely difficult to prevent decompilation. There are a lot of decompilers out there you can decompile a Python program like that. Give me a Python program, I can decompile it and give you the source code for it. I wouldn't, by the way, but I could. And by the way, in many countries, it's illegal to even attempt decompilation of a program. But Delphi has resisted decompilation just because of the way it works, because there's a lots of moving of code around and optimization and things like that. Nothing out there is impenetrable to it, because of the way, if it runs on a computer, at some point it's in memory. It has to be. There's an execution store for the program, and the instructions are there. They get sent up to the CPU and hardware and all the rest of it, and called out to APIs. And so people can create tools that will put themselves between the operating system and you'll never know about it, and your program will carry on running properly, and they can see exactly how it works. You can run tools that will extract all the API calls you've called, whether it's written in Delphi or C++ or anything else. There's nothing you can do about it. There are some tools out there that do encryptions. HASP used to be people that used to do a USB tool that would decrypt the program on the fly whilst it executed, and was very resistant to hacking, but I think they've stopped it now. But really, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a program is, by its nature, has to be readable at some point, otherwise the computer can't operate it. So you can obfuscate your code. That means take the code and make it look difficult to understand. It still functions the same way, but when you look at the code, it's gibberish. Instead of all these nice variable names like password, or S password or something like that, it will now say Z4995, and then it makes it very difficult to understand what's happening with those things. So decompiler is not very good, but code signing will help prevent your applications being executed when they are virused, corrupted by a virus, or when someone's hacked them. So if they go in and they try and hack parts of the exe header to relocate it to a different area, that breaks the code signature, because the code signature, the code signing, which we did a webinar about a while ago, although it's changed, so we can, as Peter Pan said, the way it works has changed recently, last year. Code signing helps, but again, it's just one of those things where people can get around it. Hackers, it's an arms race. As soon as you think you've got a solution, the hackers come up with another solution that solves your solution, so solves your workaround, and it'll keep going like that. Today, as we record this, as we broadcast this, there's a 0-day vulnerability found in Linux. And the thing about Linux is it's always said, it's finds fewer viruses than Windows. It's not completely oblivious to problems, but it's usually safer. Well, someone has found a 0-day exploit for Linux. It's critical. It's important, and the US government have put out a message about it. Linux can be messed up by viruses, and I think lots of things can as well. Same with Macs, it happens. That's why you need to run your updates regularly, folks, and often, and as soon as they're available. I run that machine behind me, which is a machine I test some things on. That does updates as soon as they're available. This one here, I have to do them on a schedule, otherwise I could be in the middle of a broadcast or something happens, because it goes, oh, he's not doing anything, and it restarts the machine, or the updates are coming down and it slows down the technology. So that would be annoying. I think that is it. We've got a good number of people watching today. This was an interesting message from Contreras. Snapcraft is the most secure option for distributing applications due to its sandboxing, automatic updates, built-in security checks. There are some tools out there that allow you to run executables in an envelope, and I don't know Snapcraft, so I'm guessing it's like that. Some of them will pass like a service, a Windows app, for example, and treat it like a service. So a regular app that does, I don't know, something like takes a picture of a clipboard every 5 minutes or something. Some of those can be wrapped with tools that then turn it into a Windows service that runs without being logged in. So there are all sorts of tools out there that do things. And one of the things that people who are not particularly sophisticated like about Electron, which is the technology used for JavaScript programs that then become desktop programs, it's very good, but it used to be extremely bloated and could be a problem. But the replacement for Winamp, which I can't believe I can't remember what it's called because I use it all the time. What's it called? Spotify. There you go. Spotify is Electron, and that's a similar thing. You create a wrapper around it, and even TMS have a thing that they use as well that can do a wrapper and then wrap your applications as web apps basically, and deliver them to the Raspberry Pi and all sorts of things. So there are lots of different ways, but we're talking today about genuine installers that install your app for real on the machine. So in the applications folder, for example, on a Mac, in program files or wherever you choose it on Windows, and again applications or /user/bin or whatever in Linux, depending on how it's installed. But there's a lot of stuff out there. Very, very good. I think that's it. I think I kind of covered most of the questions as I went along. So just to recap, next Tuesday we are it can be sort of Astra Linux and all, or iOS. I think so. It's not okay. Yeah, I see. There's some discussion about Linux. So next Tuesday, I'm talking about how to make your apps scaled properly for high DPI, which I'm beginning to regret because it's one of those subjects where actually it's difficult to show on a broadcast, but also difficult to explain to someone who hasn't got the problem. What I will talk about some of the things to do with that. and what to do if your ID doesn't look right on the IDPI as well, which more coming about that in the future, and also what to do with about ancient applications of yours which you don't want to recompile, but you want to look like they work properly under Windows 11 or something, high DPI. There are actually compatibility settings you can change that will allow your apps to scale up and look better without any changes to your code. I don't recommend you do this as a matter of course, but if you really want to, if you've got someone who's kicking up a fuss, there are things you can do to avoid that. And so it'll be a generalized talk about that. On Friday is our special 30th anniversary of Delphi. And I'm hoping that I'm going to get some good guests in. A couple of people have said they'll join us, and may get people like Patrick Prematan, if you're up and around. May get him to say hi as well, because he's always in chat, so why not, if he's available next Friday. And yeah, just generally we're going to reminisce about 30 years of Delphi and look at the old versions and have a good laugh about them installing, because there have been some videos where someone installed Delphi 1 and then upgraded all lots of different versions. Jim and Keith might join me depending on what he's doing. He's a bit busy at the moment, and go from there. So some of the comments: showing an 8K monitor on a 30 by 240 YouTube player, easy. Yeah, you see where I'm coming from now, right? With the difficult to show high DPI on a broadcast. It should actually be 1080p. We broadcast at 1080p now because we discovered I can do that because I've got a really good fiber connection, and apparently my connection makes a difference. How does PA server figure into this, Jeff? So what happens with PA server is that's used to connect to something like a Mac machine to create your artifacts, your .ipas and so on and so forth, applications, your .apps. And that's what PA server is used for. Same with Linux. To create the actual executable for Linux, PA server talks to the Linux box, compiles it on there, and then dumps it on. And then you can pick those artifacts up and do the installer. So PA server doesn't really play a direct part in what goes on, but it does kind of factor into the whole process of compiling your apps for the system. As Peter says, how has it already been 30 years? Mate, how long ago did you and I work together? It's got to be 18 years since you and I worked together. I'm thinking about it because I emigrated to the US 15 years ago, and it was a good few years before that you and I were working together. So, yes, it really could be 30 years, isn't it weird? Yeah, Pete's an ex-colleague and good friend of mine as well. So, we used to work at a software house in South London. So, there you go. Back in the day. Patrick says he'll be there. Woo! So we get to. I won't put Patrick on the spot too much because I know he gets worried about speaking too much English, and I get worried about speaking too much French as well. But yes. Oh, Peter says, yeah, it was 2006. Wow, 19 years, really? Holy moly! Yeah. So Pete and I are quite young, really. But that's a long time ago, 30 years. Does Delphi still attract younger programmers? Actually, as part of what I do is outreach to try and do that. It's hard, but if you go to the Brazilian conference, for example, most of the people there are under 40, and many of them are under 30. And there was like, I think 750 people at the last Brazilian conference I went to. We're going to show a video on Friday of how many people turned up because it was mind bending, and we are trying to do something about that. We've got people in Portugal and Brazil, Germany, and the UK, I believe, who are getting Delphi taught in college and schools again. And I'm looking to talk to other people again. Like I say, if things didn't work out before, come back to us and see what we can do. But I believe personally that the secret for us being here for years to come is to get young people using Rad Studio and Delphi, and it is working. a number of new installs using the CE version and who self-identify in a particular age group, because we send out surveys and things like that, is good. So we know that we're reaching people and people are picking up the CE version, for example, and falling in a youngish age group. So that's pretty good. It's interesting. Patrick makes a good point here, because people say, oh, you get people saying, oh, Delphi this, Delphi that, and then when you show them what you can do with it, and I can go click, 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 here's an Android and iOS app like that, they're always go, is that it? Is that all you do? And I go, yeah. And we are releasing shortly a onboarding guide, and this is an exclusive for the people still on the webinar. Only 3 have gone, so that's good. We're doing an onboarding guide, and I think we finished it, and we're about to give it out to a few people. That is shows people who know how to code, or at least have familiarity with coding, and show them how to onboard to Delphi if that's what they want to do. And it shows you the differences between different IDEs and different languages, and how you can do it easier in Delphi. And just, it's not a sales document, it's more of a kind of so you're going to use Delphi, or you think about, is Delphi a viable option? Here's a guide that will help you do it. So as Patrick said, I know this sounds like complete sales BS, but it really isn't. I genuinely, the reason I do this job is I believe in the language. I've been a Delphi developer since Delphi 1, and I believe that writing code any other way is doing it the hard way. I really, really believe that. I mean that. And I think that in terms of creating mobile apps, it is, for people that do it, kind of recognized as being a very viable, good way of doing it. So, not click, click, drop, 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 off you go. There are other options as well. I'm not going to pretend that, that there aren't other ways of doing it. But this single code base of Delphi creating an Android and iOS app is absolutely true, 100%. I'll show you it. Show you that happening. And you can create some apps that have virtually no code, if not no code. I'm not going to claim that a complicated app is going to have zero code. That's a complete lie. But for certain scenarios, you can create apps that work on Android and iOS and have virtually zero code to do what you need to do, and it's interesting. TIC Doc says also in Spain, Delphi is introduced at university. Yes, in fact, that's another area. One of our partners called Danisoft is working with a couple of our people as well, and they have managed to get it into university in Spain. And Pascal's quite strong in Spain as well. The University of Salamanca is holding an event in January 2026. 2026. That's because of Pete saying 2006. But they hold the National Pascal Conference over in Spain, in Salamanca. It's very, very strong out there, and I'm probably going that year and have a look. But Germany, Denmark, Brazil, Japan, South Korea, South Africa, they teach it in South Africa. There's you name it, it's everywhere. It's just that, like I say, people don't really talk about it for whatever reason. I don't know. It's okay. And Patrick says, great. As Peter says, and this is very interesting, 2 of his 7 colleagues are fresh out of uni and doing Delphi. Carrying the flag, mate. I like it. Well done, Pete. Yeah, it's good. And Pete has no reason to say that. I mean, we're friends anyway. He doesn't need to butter me up. But yeah, it's good to know that they're fresh out of university. I could be better in the IDE, like IntelliJ, and lower prices also. Yeah, I get it. Look, Luis, I mean, there's a price point that the company charges you can use the pro version, which is a paid version, and do 99% of the things you want. And certainly with the CE version, you can have a startup and create Android and iOS apps um, without paying anything. But I realize that at some point, you're probably going to end up paying some money for the IDE. And we're always looking for options. At the moment, there's some big discount. I've got notes about this. Oh, no, my notes are gone. Oh, you took my notes away. Oh, there you go. It's like the discounts, I think, are 20%, 25%, and 30% off. So contact the salespeople. I don't do the sales. I just talk about stuff. But you can get discounts on the price of things, so it's pretty good. The calculator example between Delphi and other languages was fun. Yes, we did do a challenge. Actually, I took part in that, and we paid some contractors, good ones, to write a calculator app, I think, and a couple of other apps as well, but calculator app in Python, .NET, and I think it might be C#.NET. I'm not sure what the other language was as well, and Delphi. And we had a couple of Delphi MVPs at the time. I was an MVP, and we took part in that, and it was timed. And then there was a speed run. Do it again, but now do it as quickly as you can now that you've done it once. And I wrote the first version, I think, in 2.5 hours, and then so I achieved the objective in 2.5 hours. And then I redid it, and I did it as a Fire, and that was a VCL app. And then I redid it as a FireMonkey app, and then I thought, well, why stop there? So I then did it as a web app using IntraWeb. I did it as a web app using TMS Web Core, and then I thought, well, now I've done it as TMS Web Core. Did it as an Electron app, and then because you can output your TMS Web Core to an Electron app. And then I did it as a progressive web app, and then as a genuine, like just HTML app, all within Delphi. And as Patrick says, one of the other people, one of the other teams is Electron. I finished 7 apps quicker than the person who was an Electron developer could get anywhere with it. Now, I'm not saying like that's always going to happen, but all I'm saying is it was a genuine test. It was watched over for fairness and all the rest of it. We didn't cheat. We didn't hamper them in any way. We didn't go and pick like a lame person because that would be an unfair and useless test. We chose people whose job it is to do this, and for whatever reason, we whooped them. And some of these people did some things slightly quicker and better. But overall, we whooped it. So it was a very interesting demo. And I'm going to show this question as well because this is another good question. Would it make it easy to have monthly subscription per developer for the IDE? Yes. My personal feeling is that I think that's true. The company disagrees. However, some resellers, depending on what country you're in, Salim, look at your local reseller. Some resellers will make arrangements for that kind of arrangement, but it has to be through a reseller. Idera, who are our parent company, don't do it that way. I would like them to. They have told me why they don't do it that way, and I'm not the money man. Yeah, I'm not the people that have to sign the wages checks. I'm not the person that has to pay my money, my wages. I'm not the person that has to, pay very expensive compiler engineers, for example. So who am I to say what's the right choice and what's the wrong choice? I personally, I would like to see a monthly subscription, but the company disagree, and that's completely up to them. That's their choice. I'm not the one that gets to make those decisions. Idera, for all the things that people sometimes say, oh, it's too expensive, all the rest of it. Rad Studio and Delphi, make no mistake, in the past, Borland suffered financial difficulties and had a fire sale at one point to, save themselves. Code Gear and some of the other companies, I can't even remember what the other companies are called, but all of them struggled financially for whatever reason. and code, Idea bought the company up and have managed to keep it going and make it viable. And I would suggest, based on what I see, go from strength to strength. Certainly in the last 2 years, I feel there's been some significant changes. So, whatever they're doing is keeping the company going. If they say no monthly subscription and that saves the company from going, then what can you do? It is in price. Oh yes. Yeah, Peter says it's in price. Yeah, I forgot about them. Yeah, it's almost like Delphi 8, which I washed from my mind, Delphi 8.net, and Windows ME Millennium Edition, which I've also expunged from my mind, never to ever hear of it again. We'll talk all about that on Friday. Anyway, look, as someone says, Patrick says, search for comparison in the search field. Yeah, that's that. You can read all about the how the white papers work for the comparison. It was a genuine thing. It was peer reviewed and everything. So yeah, it was good stuff. Salim says he's in the USA. Salim, talk to your reseller and see what you can say. Go from there. Right, so I've talked enough. I have to go and talk to somebody else now, unfortunately. But thanks once again for joining us. I hope you learned a bit about the installers, if you can still remember it after we've been talking nonsense for about 40 minutes. But I will be back again on Tuesday about high DPI, and then join me on Friday for the very, very special birthday thing. And I have not mentioned it today, so I'm going to mention it once again, and that is the Delphi Summit. You've got to, if you can possibly, go to Amsterdam this year. If you can afford to go there, you really should go to the Delphi Summit, because it is, I keep mentioning it every webinar because it's very important. This being the 30th year, a lot of stuff is going on. A lot of Embarcadero people will be there. Marco Cantu, who is the main man when it comes to Delphi, one of the main men, but he's the boss of that bit. He'll be there. He'll be talking. I'll be there. I think I'm doing keynote or at least one or two speeches. I think they asked me if I'd do 2 sessions. I said yes. Don't care how many. And come along and hang out. It's in a video games arena. It's incredible where it is, but it's in the Netherlands. It's just outside Amsterdam. It's a fantastic venue. Go to that site and look at the video from last year. You see Jim McKeith dressed as William Shatner or Jim Kirk from Star Trek, and I'm there as a very fat and slightly bald Jean-Luc Picard at one point, and then later on you'll see me saying, if you use Delphi, put your hand up, because it's important, for people to represent the language and make people realize, yeah, it is used a lot. But come along, you'll hear some of the best speakers available. Konrad Vermeulen will be there. He's a very good guy. Richard Haverl will be there. Stefan Glienke, who's an extremely talented developer and really good speaker as well. I forget who else is going. I apologize, but Ray Konopka. If you've ever used Ray's components, Ray Konopka will be there if you want to come talk to us. You can definitely hang out with me. I'll say hi, and let's talk about Delphi and development in general. It'll be good. Okay, all right. See me in the high DPI on Tuesday, says Patrick. Yes, and for those of you that missed it early on, if, as I mentioned earlier, if you feel like it, record a short video, 30 seconds to 1 minute about how you use Delphi, what you like about it, and store it somewhere like Google Drive or something. Send me a share link to my email address, and as long as it's acceptable and you don't do something crazy, we'll feature you in one of the videos coming up for the birthday celebrations. But I'll see you in high DPI on Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.